All right. Well, welcome everyone to Women on Wealth. And today's topic is going to be unique in that we're going to have a critical discussion for business owners, that are looking to secure their legacy and maximize the value of the hard work that they put into their business. We're going to talk about advanced planning, which is not just preparing for the end, but rather it's building a strategic roadmap that aligns the personal, the financial, and the business goals for long-term success. And I can't think better than to have women that want to align all three of these together, which is why I'm excited to have this conversation. I am joined today by Michelle Fuller, who is a certified exit planning advisor. She has a wealth of knowledge on how to help business owners navigate this long-term kind of aspirational career path, if that's fair to say, Michelle. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Michelle, just to give everyone an idea that's listening, so you just left corporate America. You spent 20 years at premier firms. You were at John Hancock, PIMCO, State Street, UBS. You became a certified exit planning advisor, which we're going to talk about. But what I love about having you on today is you're going to look through the lens of not only the expert, but a business owner yourself. Your husband has had a business. You are joining him with the business practice. So you're kind of looking at it from both sides, if that's fair to say.
Absolutely fair to say. Very unique view, especially 20 years post financial services, corporate America. But yeah, excited to talk about it. There's a lot of different facets we'll cover today, and it
Yeah.
should be a great conversation.
No, I'm excited. I guess to kick it off, talk about your family's the auto business
Yeah,
that you're working with. Talk about having your designation as a CEPA, we'll call it, the Certified Exit Planning Advisor, and how have you used that to help the business?
absolutely. So I do just want to give listeners an idea of kind of how I got to this point, because I think it's important to
Yes,
it's a unique a unique situation I'm in, and I definitely just wanted to give the backstory so it makes a little bit of sense. So,
that would
as
be
Julina
great.
mentioned, 20 years in wealth and asset management. Most recently, about 2 years ago, I did obtain the certified exit planning advisor designation through my work at John Hancock, building out high net worth distribution. And through that process, obviously being married into a family business, 110 years, my husband is fourth generation owner. I was really just so engrossed in how much I was learning through the CEPA designation, and not only the curriculum, but through the network I was building, becoming part of the CEPA community. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much I could be doing to help our business by
Yeah.
having this information and learning all that I was learning. And so I did make the decision to leave corporate America just a few months ago, and have become now working both in the business and on the business. I don't know anything about auto repair, just just osmosis by being married into it for almost 20 years. But that's sort of how I came to be. So right now, working both as a business owner and as a CEPA, there are, of course, very unique viewpoints. You almost know more than you want to know
Yes.
about this sort of thing. But first and foremost, and as you mentioned, Julina, when we first started, the crux of what EPI, the Exit Planning Institute, teaches their advisors is the art of aligning the personal, business, and financial interests of a business owner through what they call value acceleration methodology. And value acceleration methodology is really just aligning these three things, but also making sure that the business owner is working on the financial element with ideally a financial advisor, and then also working on the building of their business,
Yes.
and kind of getting to that best in class status. And then, of course, really just making sure that the business owner understands the personal element that comes into all of this, because that very much dictates what happens through the financial path and what happens through the business path. So, having that understanding and then, working that through is definitely important. Just to touch on those three from a personal standpoint, a lot of it is really just, talking to my husband and understanding his, what his freedom point is. And the freedom point of a business owner is not the same throughout. A freedom point, for example, could be something where you say, you know what, I want to go down to a 4-day work week, or, I want to work part-time, or it's, I want to retire, or it's, I want to sell. Right. And so understanding that freedom point for business owners is so important. And again, it's going to be different for each one based on their situation. From a business standpoint, and I can talk about this in depth a little later, but part of me being a SEPA, I got to meet so many different stakeholders in the SEPA community. And one of those is what's called a value growth advisor. And these are folks that help businesses to become better businesses, frankly, no matter what their freedom point is. And so we did hire one that I had met through the SEPA community.
Okay.
This person has been fantastic. And any value growth advisor is going to help a business with sales, productivity, marketing, leadership, financials, just again, becoming that better business. And then, finally, from a financial standpoint, and this again comes just a little uniquely to me because I have been in the business for so long, but our first kind of order of business was making sure that our financial house was in order. We had been working with financial advisors for years, obviously, but making sure all of our insurance policies were lined up. We wanted to really make sure the risk was mitigated, make sure our state plans were in order, make sure our financial plan was in order, and truly, challenging our advisor to say, okay, well, what do various scenarios look like? What does the cash flow look like for us? What happens if we retire at this age versus this age versus this age? What happens if we sell the business at this point, at this point, at this point, and for this much, this much, this much? What happens if we continue to keep the business, but, kind of work more towards, a certain work level or a certain work week? Or, what if we buy more businesses? What if we continue to grow the business? And so working through those scenarios was one of the first things we did. And I'm so glad we did, to just really understand where our path could lead us.
And so there's so much information you just packed in there.
Sorry.
No. This is fantastic. So there's a few things that I liked about this process because, as you know, I also became a SEPA designated last year. And I had worked with business owners before. I had, whether it was through my career as an advisor or prior. So there's a few things that sort of, to me, became a little bit more clear, if I can, on what you just said. Number one is it's kind of like a three-legged stool, right? The personal, financial, and business need to all be aligned at once. And I think that's important because sometimes business owners just prioritize the business and they neglect the personal, et cetera. So it's the process is all about aligning the three together, right? The second thing that you mentioned that's important is it's about creating a community. It's the business owner can't do it alone. Like the financial advisor is only a piece of it. But depending on what their goals are, they are going to build this community around them to make sure that everything's aligned, if that's fair to say.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing that you mentioned too that I love is I sort of expected when I went through the process that it was going to be a very quantitative process, right? How do you create the best value for your business? But you hit on it also. It's not just about the financials. It's also about the qualitative aspect. It's what the business owner wants. It's what their goals are. Right. And so, and for everyone, it's different. So there's no cookie cutter approach.
Absolutely no cookie cutter to all this. It's definitely going to have a much different flavor depending on the business owner. And you nailed it. I think, I called this SEPA Nirvana in one of my LinkedIn posts at the time, but what was really so enlightening for me, it was a truly enlightening moment, was when, we were all sitting around the table. Our value growth advisor, our accountant, our attorney, our financial advisor, and myself and my husband. And everyone was there with their piece of expertise, but it was everyone working as a team
Yeah.
to really get us understanding what all the moving parts were for our personal, business, and financial plan.
Mm.
And then having that communication back and forth to make sure that the accountant knew what the attorney was doing, and the attorney knew what the accountant was doing, and the financial advisor could pick it all up for us, right? And our
Yeah.
value growth advisor speaking on our behalf about our growth plan for the business side. It was truly just one of those big aha moments.
Yeah.
And as you said, to echo your point, I mean, you can't do it on your own. You have to have this team in place, because they all bring an element of expertise to the process that has to be coordinated for sure.
And can you talk a little bit about the value growth advisor? Because I think I'm going to assume this is something that most listeners haven't heard of before, but they're an integral piece of the process.
Yes, they really are. So, and this again is comes through with value acceleration methodology, which is a fancy word that EPI uses for the process. But I'll tell you a funny story. When I came home from my first EPI conference, I was telling my husband about these value growth advisors, and again, he's a 20-year entrepreneur, true family business. And what is a value growth advisor, Michelle? And why are you telling me to spend money on something like this?
Yeah.
I think his reaction is very similar to what any business owner would ask,
Of course.
right? It's like, why am I going to dish out money for this? And so it took some education, and it took some interviews with the ultimately the value growth advisor we ended up hiring, which is Cultivate Advisors.
Okay.
And I can tell you that it has been money extremely well spent. So I'm involved in all of the conversations with our value growth advisor. These folks, start off initially with a rough business valuation, right? Where's our jumping off point? Let's understand all the dynamics of the business. Let's understand where roughly we believe this business is valued at, because that will then help us then pull the right levers to get this business valued at a higher rate, essentially, right? And and it's not just for the exit. And I want to make sure I make that crystal clear. I think a lot of times, business owners and we're friends with many of them. I interact with many of them just in the world I'm in now and even before, but they hear the term exit strategy and they freeze.
Yes.
I'm not interested in exiting my business. Why do I have to work on an exit strategy? Or that's something I need to worry about way down the line when I'm going to retire. And maybe I'll look at that, in my 60s or my 70s, and it's like, no. Good exit strategy is good business strategy. It's plain and simple. And so when you really start digging in, and it takes the right business owner, right? It is a multi-year process. This is not something that, set it and forget it and you're done. This is something that the business owner really needs to be bought in at, to say, yep, I'm going to take the time, the determination, the workload this is going to take, because I want my business operating at a higher level.
Yeah.
And so we hire these folks, as I mentioned, and we really just dug into things like, our productivity, our financials. Sometimes there's certain areas that need to be tweaked more than others, right? Our financials were in a good state, but for example, we weren't working off of QuickBooks Online. And it's like, well, why aren't you working on QuickBooks Online? You got to move everything over to this system. And so it was sometimes it's like that third party that gives you the little kick you need to do things that maybe been in the back of your mind, and you're like, I'll get to it. No. We need to do this now, and I'm going to keep you accountable for making sure that it gets done in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
They're helping us to scale our businesses, right? And so, we're at a point where we have just over 50 employees, and we didn't have a formal onboarding and training system. It was kind of just, okay, show up on your first day, and so-and-so is going to take you around, and we're going to show you how to do it. We're going to show you how the soup's made right here in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's like, no. We're going to have a formal online
Mhm.
onboarding and training system. And so,
Mhm.
that's another thing we've been working on that's just been tremendous. And it takes a lot off the managers and other employees, right?
Yes.
If you're, this day and age, so many folks learn virtually and they learn through videos and so having that and building that out has been great. And they actually had the system for us. Say,
Yeah.
here is the text, we need to work in your tech stack. Here's one piece of technology you need, and here it is for you. And that's all part of the fee you pay them
Absolutely.
as you're working with them. I'm trying to think, there's so many things we've worked on, human resources situations that have come up, even making our first acquisition, that happened.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, as you continue to grow and scale, it's like you need assistance with all of that as you
All of it.
maintain the day-to-day duties of what the business is there for, right? And
Absolutely.
and Michelle, maybe not so much the owner hat on you, but more the SEPA. Is it true that a lot of times business owners value their business in a different way than the market might perceive the value of the business?
I call this concept calling your baby ugly.
Yeah,
And it happens more than you think.
of
And so,
course.
these are business owners that have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this for many,
Yeah.
many years. And, having that third party evaluation and really just getting real with, all right, there's maybe what you think your business is worth.
Yeah.
And then there's the concept of what someone else is going to pay for it. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
And what are some common reasons that those numbers are not in line?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes, a lot of it is just due to not just having the right valuation tactics or, number one. Number two, because you're the one that's in that business every day to day, you a lot of times just lose that outside looking in
Yeah.
type view
Yeah.
that is necessary. And I mean, think about your house, right? You might think your house is worth X, but you won't really know,
Yeah.
even with a realtor coming in telling you how to price it, until
Yeah.
you get that first offer. And that's, it's general, sales economics numbers. It's something is worth what someone else is willing to pay for it.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking of, I know a lot of women business owners that love control of everything that they're doing. And they love to say this could not, this could not function without me. Right. And
Yeah.
so, and that becomes a problem though, that hurts the valuation because, well, what if something did happen to you, right? That's a huge amount of risk to the business. They might think that that's a positive on their end, but an outside buyer would not think the same way.
Not at all. In fact, and that's hard for a lot of business owners. It's
Yes.
a very hard pill to swallow, for lack of a better way to put it, because again, you've a lot of times built this from the ground up,
Yeah.
and you are the lifeblood of this. However, that is the complete antithesis to a valuable business, because someone's coming in to buy it. A lot of times you or take it over. A lot of times that owner kind of goes out with the dollars,
Yeah.
right? And so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I need to be able to pick up where you left off. And if you're so integral to this business that it can't operate without you,
Yeah.
that's not going to work best from a transition perspective.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so Michelle, you mentioned that, this designation we have is through the Exit Planning Institute and sort of the core of it is this whole process called the value acceleration methodology. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because as you mentioned before, it is not a set it and forget it process. It's a multi-year phase. It's building long-term goals, short-term goals. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about what's behind it and maybe how it's helped the auto business for you all?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it all, they have it kind of separated out into gates, but for our business owner listeners, the first kind of start of the process is discovery.
Yeah.
And that discovery is really working with that, those two critical partners. At first, there's many partners, but this the financial advisor will help you to discover where you're at from a financial perspective. Do you have the policy set up? Do you have the estate plan set up? What does your financial plan look like? What are we doing from a 401k perspective? What's our IRA lineup look like? All of those things have to be, the questions have to be asked, and that discovery has to be had with regard to just understanding the financial picture.
Yeah.
At the same time, the value growth advisor is going to be working on discovery for the business, right? How are you valuing your business? What does that look like? What's the state of the business now? How involved are you? What does your management team look like? I mean, so many different questions are really asked in this beginning phase. And then, of course, that qualitative element you mentioned, as opposed to quantitative, is, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Right? What is your freedom point? Is it a sale price of X amount because your financial advisor told you you need that to live on without working for the next 20 years?
Right.
Or is it just, not working, 14 hours a day? Right. What does that freedom point look like for you? So again, personal, business, financial.
Yeah.
Then, once you get that sort of house in order, then you're moving into this, this prepare gate, where you're preparing all of the elements, right? You're preparing the financial plan. You're preparing the strategic growth plans for the business. You're really just making sure that all of those questions are answered. And now you're starting to execute on those. You're getting all of the financial pieces in line. And then on the business side, that's when you're starting to say, okay, we need to get on QuickBooks Online. We need to get a better training and onboarding system. We need to improve our productivity by X, Y, and Z by incentivizing our salespeople, our workers through a different way.
Yeah.
Or we need to, all of those critical, important pieces of running a good business are now put into plans. Some people use what's called 90-day sprints. So kind of revisiting things on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
We have adopted those, meaning, okay, here are the initiatives for the next 90 days. Everybody has their to-dos, right? It's not just a one person or two person thing. Business owner has their to-dos. The financial advisor has their to-dos. The business people that work in the business have their to-dos. And then we're going to review them quarterly to make sure that we're continuing on our plan. Yeah. And that can be done on the financial side, depending on what you're working on. And of course, that's done on the business side. Where are we with this, initiative? Have we checked this off our list? Have we run into any hurdles? And that, and that can even happen on the financial side. Now, when I think about it, things change all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? Say, for example, within the 90 days, hey, I found a really great potential acquisition. I'm going to need to work with my banker to potentially set up a loan. Mm-hmm. What do I need to do for that?
Right.
Unfortunately, we see this all the time. There are situations where if you don't do this advanced planning, you can run into, a death of a family member or, some sort of disability situation, right? You want to be prepared for all of those what if situations, and they can happen, right? Yes. Yeah. So having that constant dialogue, even just the check-in, is so important to the plan and execution. And then I guess the last element, and kind of finishing off the methodology piece, is just making those decisions. And again, that can happen every 90 days, every 180 days, however often you think, but you have to kind of come and say, well, am I ready to potentially exit? And if I am, I really need to understand my exit options, because there's so many different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Or do I want to continue growing the business? Maybe it's not at a point where I'm ready to retire or exit. Maybe it's at a point where it's not at a best in class status. Yeah. And so I really need to probably continue growing it. And so you're kind of moving back into that prepare gate where you're spending time on those strategic plans, on those 90-day sprints, and developing the business element to get that to the point where you want it. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, and a lot of business owners are not as educated as they can be and they should be around the different exit options that exist.
Yes.
I know we weren't. And just knowing enough to be dangerous about those options can make all the difference for your peace of mind, for your planning, and for your ultimate exit, whatever that looks like.
No, and I love the comment of the peace of mind, and your breakdown of the value acceleration methodology. Hopefully the listeners can realize and understand that as we kicked this off in the beginning, this is not about just creating an exit plan, right? It really is about creating the best value for your business, aligning it with your personal goals and mitigating the risk, right? That's a big part of it. I think, you mentioned that was something that you all had to confront as the business was kind of evolving. Michelle, where would you say your business is now when you look at identify these different gates? And have you kind of circled around? Because obviously you both are young and you're business owners that aren't planning on selling tomorrow, from what I understand.
Right. Bless your heart for calling me young.
Yeah.
I wish my kids had the same sentiment. We are very much still in the prepare game. I think our financial plan is in a really great spot. So
That's
I think
great.
probably because of the business I came out of, that was really top of the list for us, and we're in a great spot there. So I wouldn't say we checked off that box, because it's always a dynamic process.
Yep.
But we're good there. In terms of personal, kind of digging deep with Josh and with me, frankly, has been done. And I think, it's funny, just like any of the rest of us, right? Any business owner you talk to, I mean, depending on the day, you might get that person at a weak moment where like, that's it. Yeah. I'm done. I'm out. And those happen, just like they happen to everybody. Or on most of the days, it's, like we have so much momentum. We have a plan in front of us. We are in a great spot. We know what we have to do. We know what our North Star is. Now it's time to execute flawlessly. And so we are in that spot right now where, our employees are absolutely fantastic. They have really bought into the process. Our management team is completely on board with growing our business and continuing to grow our business. So now it's just really staying on top of those 90-day sprints and the initiatives, and just making sure that we are in a state of, continuous improvement and relentless execution.
I love that. Well, this. I mean, most business owners, when you ask them how the business is going, don't give you an answer like that gives as much peace of mind as you just gave for not only for the business, but for your family. So I think that's fantastic. So kudos.
Thank you.
So I guess for any business owner that's listening, if you're not quite there is a way to get there, right? So
there is a way to get there. Absolutely. And, I can't thank our value growth advisor enough. This was one of the most, I would say, critical elements to getting to this point. Just quick little, commercial, I guess you'd call it, for Cultivate.
Yeah.
All of their advisors are previous business owners. And that was a huge selling point for my husband, because you want to be sitting and working with someone who's sat in your shoes.
Yeah.
And really gets it. Because as much as I could say, I understand what it's like to be a business owner, corporate is not entrepreneurship. Corporate is not small business ownership. And I am learning that firsthand now, right? It's not. And so, having someone, again, who's working with you, who has literally done what you've done or something really, really similar, is so important. So to be an advisor with Cultivate, you have successfully owned businesses and or successfully exited businesses. And again, that is another piece that they bring, and another element that you want with someone working with you, right? Because they can give you all of those little pointers that experience teaches, not textbooks.
Yeah.
And that was really a big selling point for myself and Josh when we hired them. So, but I will say you've got, just like anything else, what you put in is what you get out. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, there's times when, I know that Josh's mind is in 100 million directions and it's not necessarily focused on our session that day. And I get it. It happens. Business owners are pulled in a million different ways. They're putting out fires. They're responsible for so many different things. But, again, when you're locked in, when you're committed, when you are, again, executing along the strategic path, then you're going to see the results. And that's important.
I think it's why the process is so important. Absolutely. So how did you find your value growth advisor? Or I know you're in the business, so that's probably, how would one go find one if they wanted to chat with one?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I get that asked quite a bit. So certainly, as business owners, you're not rubbing elbows with a lot of these folks. A lot of times, there's a couple of different things. I think working with your financial advisor will be, as we've really shown today, so important to the process. And a lot of times, your financial advisor will have a network of advisors that they know and they trust to work through, right? Yeah. I'm sure, you, Julina, have, potentially bankers and lenders that you can refer out to, or accountants or attorneys, or, and really looking at those folks through a lens of business owner, not, just because I see this whole time, business owners, well, we've used this accountant for the last 40 years because this is the accountant our family's always used. And
right.
That's maybe not necessarily the right fit for a business that's wanting to grow and expand and or even exit, right? So, of course, surrounding yourself with a network that works closely with business owners would be a good place to start. The EPI's website, exitplanninginstitute.org, I believe it is, has a list of SEPAs by state.
Yeah.
And this is free to anyone that wants to go on their site. So you can find, kind of business advisors through that network. And then, again, I just think the more advisors you surround yourself with as a business owner, the more referrals you'll glean through it.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a great place to start too. And I'm always more than willing to help, as I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you had mentioned that part of the process to get your husband sort of acclimated with what was going to transpire, I guess, you had him read a book.
I did.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the prerequisites to becoming a SEPA is reading a book by Chris Snyder called Walking to Destiny. And I actually read this book on vacation with my husband.
So did I.
And and I remember taking this book and putting it down on his beach chair. And I said, you have to read this book. This book is one of the best books I have read in a really long time. And me getting so much out of it, just being married into this family business world versus you, who's at the helm of this ship.
Yes.
You have to read this immediately. Yeah. And he was kind of skeptical at first. But I think he kind of knew it was coming because he'd be, swimming in the pool and I'd be like, have my nose in this book and like, hey, Josh, what's your EBITDA? And he's like, what? Like, why are you asking me this? Or I'd ask him some other crazy question.
Yeah.
And, but all kidding aside, he did read the book, and this was so helpful for him because it really, he had a lot of aha moments because the way Chris writes it, Chris was a, corporate guy who transitioned to business ownership. And so he's able to really give real world experiences throughout his book that are resonate so well with the reader. And so I think that really helped. And then of course, when I, threw Value Growth Advisor at him, it wasn't the first time he had heard it.
Yeah.
And, he was like, okay, I've seen this process literally written out on a page. I get how it works.
Yeah.
And this is just another element of Michelle helping me to to really be the best business owner I can be.
Yeah.
So that it was highly recommend.
Well, and I think it's also, there is so much detail that Chris gives. And so even just looking at the studies of business owners and how they feel, how they act, how prepared they are, which is they never are. A lot of business owners, we joke about this, they, when they do decide they want to exit, they decide and they want to plan like a year out. Right. And so even if you don't want to exit, if you did, part of it is understanding that there really should be a lengthy process, because then you really want to maximize the value of the business and make sure you're aligned, right? That's the whole goal. So,
Yes, not something to rush.
yeah,
Definitely
and
not.
I didn't have a business owner's perspective when I read it, but I did find that there is some tremendous amount of information, and it helps explain the process in a very simple way. It is a process. So it is not just a
Process.
philosophy, and there is a process around it. And there, to your point about the different gates, there are different steps along the way that maybe not every business owner needs to attack, but you need to at least ask the question.
100%. I've read a number of really good business books in my day, and this is definitely top 10.
That's great. Michelle, thank you so much for all of your insight. I am wishing you the best on the next part of your journey, since I know you're in a transition phase right now. But again, having someone with your background of understanding the process and then also having the business owner's eye towards it, I was just excited to have you join us. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I truly appreciate it. Any opportunity to talk women, wealth, business owners, financials, you name it, really makes me gets me very excited. So thank you. Truly, this has been time well spent, and I'm more than happy to help any of our listeners.
That's great. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to connect you to Michelle. So thank you.
Thank you, Julina.